Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius. I am John Beard of PewterReport.com. Along with listeners to another edition of the Pewter Report. And we are coming to you live on a Victory Monday, Scott, in which it feels like the Bucs have won again because Giovanni Bernard is a new Tampa Bay Buccaneer as of a couple minutes before this show started.
That's
he
right.
signs a one-year contract with the Bucs.
Yeah, and certainly not that much of a surprise because we've done a story on Giovanni Bernard. We've talked about him on the podcast before, John. It makes a lot of sense because they need a running back to replace LaShawn McCoy. They need a guy that can come in, be a factor catching the ball, and also in pass protection. And
Right.
Leonard Fournette assumed that role because he was more dynamic than LaShawn McCoy was at age 32. We both know that's not Ronald Jones's forte, but I think that they wanted an upgrade over Leonard Fournette. And I think that some competition now with Giovanni Bernard coming in and competing with Leonard Fournette for those third down opportunities.
Absolutely. I think this is a great signing, Scott, because it does a couple things that I really like. It gives you one of the best pass protecting backs in the NFL. We've talked about it over and over and over again. This was a huge area for the Bucs that they needed to upgrade. They just did not have a guy who could do it consistently. Leonard Fournette's career sample size, he's not been good in pass protection. Ronald Jones has been even worse in his career sample size in pass protection. He can't even get in the way most of the time. And so it was a big need. Also, a better receiving back was also a big need. These were two critical areas that I felt like they didn't get better in this offseason. They won the Super Bowl last year despite that not being a strength of their team. Could they have done it again? Maybe, but logic tells us we want to get better at things that we're not good at, even if we could overcome them. So they've worked to get better now at that crucial area. Another thing that it does, it gives you even more draft flexibility. If you don't take a running back in this entire class, it is not a big deal. Now,
Correct.
They could, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but early in the draft, to me, Scott, at least early in the draft, it takes off the table for the Bucs to take a running back. I don't think that they'll take one in the first couple rounds.
Well, they probably won't, but like you said, it lessens the need for one. But I'll say this, John. Now you've got three running backs: Giovanni Bernard, Leonard Fournette, and Ronald Jones that are only under contract for 2021. The only running back on this team, I think there's two. I think C.J. Prosise, who's, of course, no lock to make this team.
Yeah.
But he and Keyshawn Vaughn are the only running backs under contract in 2022. So you look at Keyshawn Vaughn. Is this a bit of a telltale sign? It certainly makes his chances for making the team decrease if they draft another running back to compete. But competition always makes you better. I didn't see enough from Keyshawn Vaughn to get terribly excited about him possibly being a guy that could either fill that third down running back role, John, or a guy that could team with Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette and help carry the load on first and second down.
Right. I mean, here's the other thing with the running back position, Scott. You said, yes, that's true. There's three guys on one-year deals that are going to be your top three backs this season. There's no guarantee Keyshawn Vaughn is even going to be around,
Right.
to be honest.
Exactly.
Like, there isn't. I know fans get upset when we say that, but should these moves not tell you, fans, like what we're trying to say? Like, we're trying to tell you Keyshawn Vaughn is not a lock to be a part of the team this year at all, let alone see the field.
Right.
And so, they've got a lot of things to work through for sure before they get to that point. So we'll see.
You know what? And listen, if you didn't think the Bucs were serious about wanting to repeat, right? They re-signed all their starters, and they got a veteran guy to come in to help that running back room, and he's an upgrade over LaShawn McCoy. So this team is in win now mode again, and if you didn't know that before, this is just another indicator, John.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll have a full breakdown of Giovanni Bernard coming tomorrow. I've almost got Bucs Briefing complete. I might have to switch gears for Bucs Briefing and go back to the Gio Bernard tape for the article tomorrow. But yes, again, I think that even though there's those three backs all on one-year deals right now, or 1 year left on their deals right now, and Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, and Giovanni Bernard, I still think there's a really good chance that all three would be cheap next season, even if Ronald Jones leaves, as I expect.
Yeah.
Choosing between Leonard, the Bucs to me, is probably not going to be a very expensive decision. So I think they're going to have the ability to retain somebody. Yes, they still could draft one. If they draft one, especially in the first 4 rounds or so, I would say that's a pretty strong indicator Keyshawn Vaughn's going to be up out of here. And so we'll see. It puts Keyshawn Vaughn on notice at the very least. He's got to produce. He's got to have a great camp. He's not a lock to make the roster. He probably still makes it given the way things currently sit, but he's not a lock. I mean, if they go to camp and TJ Logan outplays him, tough luck, bud. Like, I
don't know if TJ Logan's going to necessarily, be a factor in this at all. And I think too, this could be a situation based upon special teams where the Bucs could carry 5 running backs this year, John. You could be looking at Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, Keyshawn Vaughn, Giovanni Bernard, and then another running back that they draft. And that could be the 5 running backs that comprise this team. We know that LaShawn McCoy last year wasn't a factor on special teams because of his age.
Right.
But if you draft a running back, whether it's Javonte Williams in round 1, whether it's a Michael Carter in round 3, whether it's a Khalil Herbert on day 3, there could be another running back in the mix that, along with Keyshawn Vaughn, and probably Giovanni Bernard too, helps out in special teams. Giovanni Bernard's only 29 years old. I think he could still contribute there. Still has a little bit of juice left. I think he's got some fuel left in the tank, John. He had 416 yards in 3 carries rushing last year. A modest 3.4 yard average, but he plays in the Bengals. But he caught 47 passes, and that was the highest catch production that he's had since 2015 when he had 49 catches. He caught 47 passes for 355 yards, a healthy 7.6 yard average, and scored 3 touchdowns. So you add it all up, and you're looking at a running back that has over 700 yards worth of production, and also put 6 touchdowns on the board between the air and the ground last year. And for those fans out there that were pining for James White from the Patriots, this is that type of running back, and probably a better runner at this stage of his career.
And a better pass protector.
Yeah.
And a comparable receiver. I don't know. James White, I mean, last year was down a little bit. I'm not really quite as sure where James White is at in his career. He, at his peak, definitely a better receiving option than Giovanni Bernard. Bernard, great pass protector, has been consistently good pass protector in his career. That is not very common in the NFL. So the Bucs, I honestly believe that was the biggest reason. I think when they're able to talk and talk about this move, I think you'll hear that said by Jason Light or Bruce Arians, whoever talks about it, that getting a guy that can protect like Bernard was a big deal. Also, another high character guy, a guy that everybody reportedly loved in Cincinnati, that was obviously there through some low points for the franchise. They never haven't won a playoff game in the time that he's been there. It makes a lot of sense that he would want to go to a competitor. He's not even that old at this point. I forget. He's, what is 29? He, 29? Yeah, I was going to say 29 years old. So there's still good football ahead of him. And so get this 1-year deal, have an opportunity to contribute, really, especially as a third down back. It's a big plus for the Bucs, in my opinion, to be able to get him on the field.
I agree with you to an extent, John, that it takes away the need for a running back. You don't have to draft one this year if the right guy isn't there at the right round. So that compulsion there to possibly take one before round 3, that's not there. If you still want to, you can. This is the luxury draft for the Buccaneers. They can draft whoever they want, whatever position. If they want to add one more back to the room and look ahead for 2022, they can do that. But having this guy in the stable takes away that need, that compulsion to really add another body that can help out on third downs, catching the ball, and also contribute as a runner, because you've got now 3 veterans with Rojo, Leonard Fournette, and Giovanni Bernard. And so really, John, this backfield is energized now with Giovanni Bernard, and we're energized by our good friends at Celsius. John, the refreshing taste of Celsius. It's Monday. It's my orange day. What are you drinking today?
I got some kiwi guava, sparkling kiwi guava to kick off the week. I already had one this morning, actually. So
I was enjoying the Fuji apple pear last week. Now it's the orange. I typically start my Mondays off with orange. If you're not sure what your favorite flavor is, go grab a can of Celsius and give it a try. They've got over a dozen flavors. And I don't know how they do it. It's almost like John, they just take the actual fruit and just squeeze it into these cans because the taste is there. But what's not there is sugar. That means you get the energy without the sugar crash after the 3 or 4 hours of that energy boost that you get. And that's what's great. No sugar, no preservatives in Celsius. So you want to go grab a can, not sure where they're sold, go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator. They're going to ask you to put in your address, do that, and you'll have all these different locations pop up: convenience stores, grocery stores, health and fitness stores, big stores like Walmart and Target. And then you can grab a can and see which one you like. And once you know that, then head over to Amazon. And you can do that by clicking the Celsius banners on pewterreport.com. They'll take you to Amazon where you can buy your favorite flavors in bulk and save a lot of money. So make sure you start off your day and your week with Celsius. John and I certainly have.
Yes, I have as well. And it's a big reason why I am able to express my full amount of joy and energy over this Giovanni Bernard acquisition by the Bucs. So very excited about that. I think, again, to me, what the biggest thing that it does, Scott, is if you looked at the team and said, what's the biggest need for them going to the draft? I thought it was really biggest need. You could argue whether it was the best value or where they needed to address that need.
Right.
But the biggest hole for them, in my opinion, was a back who could contribute at a high level on passing downs as a receiver and in protection. Right. And now that, to me, that is filled. So I am out on running back early. We'll see if the Bucs are again. They have their options, like you said, to be able to look over who's the best available. To me, it just opens up the possibility of a trade down even more from 32. So we'll see what happens. We've got a 7-round mock draft.
You mean trade back?
I mean trade.
Second round?
Yes, correct. That's
trade,
what I mean.
Okay. All right.
Trade back. Yeah. Trade back into the second round. Let somebody else come up, acquire other picks, either for this year, maybe next season. Not sure what that'll look like, but to me, that might be the way the Bucs go.
The thing is if the Bucs were to keep that 32nd round pick or the 32nd overall pick, we've got them taking Landon Dickerson from Alabama in our most recent mock that came out around noon today on pewterreport.com. So let's go through our 7-round mock draft. Had we known about the Giovanni Bernard signing, we might have done things a little bit differently. But the great thing is this is not our final mock, John. We've got our 5th and final mock coming out the week of the draft.
You kidding me, man? I'm really just thankful that this wasn't the mock we had Javonte Williams or Najee Harris going in the first round. This whole show would have been scrapped.
That's true. It certainly would have been impacted. So let's talk about that. Let's first show the mock draft here for everybody. So we have Alabama center Landon Dickerson in the first round. Houston defensive end. He's going to be an outside linebacker for the Bucs, but he played defensive end. He can also maybe play defensive end in Tampa if he adds a little bit more weight.
He could kick inside situationally, I think, and rush, maybe sub packages. Maybe JPP could too, though. I'd like
That's right. He's a player that you and I both like. I think you were on him before I was. I really kind of came around to him. And so we have him in there as a pass rusher in round 2. Round 3, North Carolina running back Michael Carter. And boy, if you're looking for a mentor for Michael Carter, who's a dynamic running back, it might be Giovanni Bernard, because Giovanni Bernard was basically Michael Carter at North Carolina many moons ago, back in 2012.
UNC, not big guys, but thick guys, well-built, small, shorter backs, good pass protectors, good receivers, good runners, but no dominant traits as runners. The similarities are pretty endless there,
Yeah, so it would be a fantastic mentor for him and possibly Keyshawn Vaughn. And then you go to the 4th round, John, and a little bit of interest here in a guy that you and I really like, Purdue inside linebacker Derek Barnes. We'll talk about him in just a minute, but he would be – and really you look at draft needs, it's not the most pressing need because you have 2 starters and 2 very good ones in Devin White and Lavonte David. But you're going to need another inside linebacker. Why? There's only 3 on the roster. You only have Lavonte David and Devin White and Kevin Minter. So you need at least one more guy to fill out that roster and help out in special teams. Round 5, UCF wide receiver, tight end Jacob Harris. He is a traits guy, 6'5", 219, runs a 4.39 40. Then this is probably a guy that might be taken out of the mix, either he or Carter with the Giovanni Bernard signing, and that is the offensive weapon, running back, wide receiver, kick return guy from UCLA, Demetric Felton. The Bucs have met with him a couple times. He's been in a mock draft. We had him as a 4th round pick in our previous mock draft, but the testing wasn't great. Ran a 4.59, and so he's probably slated for 6th round. Then in the 7th round, a couple of traits guys. Arkansas defensive tackle Jonathan Marshall, very good athlete, not very much production, was only a 1-year starter. And then Virginia tight end Tony Polian. So interesting thoughts there, John.
Well, there's some more breaking news out there, Scott. I saw as you were finishing up that mock, I was looking. The Patriots have terminated the contract of wide receiver Julian Edelman as a failed physical.
Oh boy!
So the speculation is going to pick up on that one as to whether Julian Edelman will be. Oh, I see people in the chat are already on it. Be a failed physical. Edelman was just caught by. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I really don't think Julian Edelman will be a Buck. I don't. If he is a Buck, it'll be fully Tom Brady just saying he wants his guy. I don't even know. No, because for a couple reasons. He didn't actually play in the slot as much as people think in New England. He actually has played in his New England career. This is going to blow people's mind. Right. He's actually played more snaps as an outside receiver than as a slot receiver in New England's offense. Now, New England plays a lot of reduced splits, a lot of moving their outside receiver off the ball, playing their slot on the ball or on the line of scrimmage. And so it's still a lot of clean releases for him. I just don't know where he fits with the Bucs. They like vertical threats. He's not that. They like guys who can create after the catch. He's not that. He's old. He's apparently failed a physical. We'll see how that process plays itself out and whether other teams end up agreeing or not. But I don't know that I see anything that, he's not been the same receiver for a while. He's dropped a lot of passes the last couple of years. Yeah. He's not a difference maker anymore. They have tons of weapons. Putting him on the field would take away snaps, frankly, from better players in Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller and whoever else comes around.
The thing is I'm not a huge Antonio Brown fan, but Antonio Brown is a better receiver right now at this stage of his career and his age than Julian Edelman is.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I'm just saying, and therefore that makes AB a better fit in Tampa. And I don't know that AB is coming back. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely possible that it doesn't. We're probably in for the long haul with AB now. It's probably going to go to like camp, I would guess, unless he signs before the draft somewhere. But the money's not going to get any better, like we've talked about, and the opportunities aren't going to change until training camp, probably. So we'll see what ends up happening with him. I still think AB could be back. I don't know. A lot is going to depend, honestly, about does he stay out of the news over the next several months if it takes until training camp. That's the thing I'm not sure about.
You're exactly right, John. I think you just nailed it right there. There's no benefit for the Bucs signing Antonio Brown right now. You literally wait until the day before training camp. If this guy's still available, that's when you sign him. You make him prove to himself and the Bucs organization he can stay out of trouble.
Yep.
Because this is a long summer. I mean, we're still in spring. We haven't gone through summer yet. There's no benefit right now for a guy that spent the last 12 weeks learning the system. Mm-hmm. He knows the offense by now, right? Yep. He performed in it. So right now, there's no benefit to having Antonio Brown on your roster. You wait until he is clean as a whistle, and then you sign him maybe the day before training camp.
Right. It's a long haul thing with him at this point, I think. Right. So yeah, to me, I'm Julian Edelman might retire, honestly. I don't know that I see any reason for the Bucs to sign Edelman at this point in time. So interesting that it's out there. I'll probably try and write something for this week about Edelman and a potential Bucs fit and why I don't think it makes sense. But we'll definitely keep our eye on that as it moves forward. And we'll go back to the mock draft here in a second because I know we have more to talk about there. But Capo says, guys, if AB doesn't come back, do you think Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson should be a wide receiver 3? I think it should be Tyler Johnson because I think he could be a better all-around receiver. I really think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be both of them splitting the role. If those are their top 4 going into the year, I think they're going to split the role depending on matchups, depending on the defense that they're playing, those kind of things. I think you'll see him split the role, and you'll see guys move around a good bit. I mean, if Scotty Miller's on the field, I think they'd rather play Mike Evans inside if they need to than Scotty Miller. And so
and the thing too, John, that's what training camp and the preseason are for. And Tyler Johnson didn't have the benefit of a rookie mini camp or even a full training camp. It was a truncated training camp. It was about 3 weeks long rather than 5. And then you didn't have the preseason. So for Tyler Johnson, he's still in improvement mode. Yeah, he made a couple of great catches. I think there's potential and promise there. I'm not down on him at all, but he's got to show that he can operate in this offense and be consistent. rather than a guy that's going to contribute, one catch per game. So
he does. And one of the key things with this wide receiver core right now, Scott, is that it's finally where I think Bruce Arians likes it to be, and that everybody can play inside if needed. Now, Scotty's never going to do it a ton, but the other three, Evans and Tyler Johnson and Chris Godwin, they all obviously can play inside. Godwin is going to play the majority of snaps there, but it just allows them to stay really unpredictable on passing downs and route combinations, things like that. They are harder to scout ahead of time for teams and figure out, oh, this guy's here, they're running this combination. Not always the high number of snaps for Mike Evans last season in the slot. So Tyler Johnson obviously able to play there, played there in college. He can play outside too, play outside in college.
Physical guy, and you have to have that. You have to have that Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Tyler Johnson style body with the physicality to get in there and do the dirty work and the run blocking, because that slot guy, when they're not running out for routes and to catch balls, they're a big time edge defender or even a motion defender coming inside and helping out in the run game. So that's why Scotty Miller is not your traditional slot guy in Bruce Arians' offense, and that's why Julian Edelman is not a fit in Tampa Bay in the slot, because this is a different offense than it is up there in New England. So
for sure. And the other thing I'll mention about wide receivers, Scott, while we're on it, before we get back to the mock, is that tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, maybe I'll write about Gio Bernard. Tomorrow or Wednesday, I will have an article coming out about the Bucs options at the wide receiver position in the draft. If people remember from last year, I will plug the article again on Twitter, and in the article I'm writing tomorrow or Wednesday about the wide receiver position. I looked last year and researched what Jason Light has prioritized when drafting the wide receiver position for the Bucs. Some of those things are wide receivers who are at least 6'1", at least 205 to 210 pounds in that range, at least running the 4.4s, and at least jump 35.5 inches. Probably might go down to 35 if he needed to, but we'll see. Right now it's been 35.5. That's been the threshold. Those have been pretty strong indicators. You think he's drafted 8 receivers. We didn't have Tyler Johnson numbers from the pro day, but we know his weight. He was 6'2.5", 205. So he's got the size. And when not 6'2.5", sorry, 6'1.5", 206, I think he was at his pro day, and he didn't run or anything, but they said they had great time speeds on him. So again, the speed and the leaping ability matter for the Bucs. They don't care about the agility drills for wide receivers, and they shouldn't, because for the most part that studies have shown us those don't matter much for the receiver position. So when you're thinking about who could the Bucs draft a receiver, we think along those lines: the size, the speed, the leaping ability, and then we'll look at some other things too, and it'll be up in an article, and I'll have several receivers that fit that criteria for people to think about at that position. Well, let's go back. Can we? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to your point, the thing is you don't have to re-sign Antonio Brown with some of these wide receivers in this draft. It's a pretty decent crop of wide receivers, and right now, if you really like Tyler Johnson, I think this team does. You really like Scotty Miller. I mean, that's 4 receivers there between your franchise guy and Godwin, your other franchise guy, and your real franchise guy, Mike Evans. That's 4. And then you add another wide receiver to the mix. And you can even draft one early, John.
Because in the first round if you want, Scott.
You could, because one of these guys, whether it's Chris Godwin, who's on a 1-year franchise deal, or whether it's Scotty Miller, who is now entering year 3, right? And you may not be able to re-sign him. So you got to keep reloading so you have guys. I think Justin Watson has topped out. I think we've seen what he is. He's a special teams wide receiver. And I don't know that he's going to ever really be a big-time contributor on offense. As wide receiver 5, he's an emergency wide receiver at that. So I think the Buccaneers are open to drafting a wide receiver. You can never have enough good wide receivers for this offense.
Right. I completely agree. I think that there's plenty of options kind of available to them.
As a matter of fact, John, we have the Buccaneers drafting a wide receiver or 2.
2 of them, kind of. Kind of 0, kind of 2.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start at the top, shall we, with this guy that we like, Landon Dickerson. John, why in the world would the Buccaneers draft the top-rated center who's coming off of an ACL injury with the first pick, the last pick in the number 32 in the first round, but Tampa Bay's first pick?
I texted you before the Gio Bernard trade, about a half hour before the Gio Bernard trade, just thinking through options for the Bucs and thinking about our show today. And I said the 4 most mock players, according to grindingthemocks.com, to the Bucs are Christian Barmore, Davion Nixon, Najee Harris, and Travis Etienne. I don't think the Bucs are going to draft any of them. Even if they are there, I think they are going to take an interior O-line, a DB, or wide receiver unless they trade back. Wide receiver is the long shot. Interior offensive line or trade back are far above the other options in my mind in terms of what I think they will do.
Yeah.
I believe, Scott, if he's on the board and if his medicals check out, meaning if there's no prognosis long-term for Landon Dickerson that concerns the Bucs in terms of the injuries he's had in the past, I think it's an ACL in each knee at some point in the last 4 years, some nagging ankle stuff shut him down at Florida State. Then he started 24 straight games at Alabama. Then he got hurt this past season.
Right.
Recovery seems like it's going great. He was suited up for a snap in the national championship game.
He was doing cartwheels, John, behind Mac Jones.
Right.
At Alabama Pro Day.
Yeah, and he's picking up Nick Saban and carrying him around the field after the national championship game. So it seems like things are going well. As long as the medicals check out and he's still on the board at 32, I think he's going to be the Bucs pick. The tape is there. The profile is there physically that they like at offensive line. They like big guys. They like big, strong, powerful people movers, nasty, high character, love football. He's all of those things to a T. And I think there's a decent chance he's there.
I don't know if there's a player who loves football more than this guy, John. Yeah. He is listen, he gets on a Zoom with Bruce Arians and Jason Light, and it's probably already happened. If it hasn't happened by now, it'll happen soon. And I think it's over. I think it's a done deal. They love this guy. The tape is one thing, but when you get to know his personality, and listen, that matters, right? When you're a center, you got to be able to communicate. Yes. You got to be a communicator. You got to be a leader. That's what Ryan Jensen is.
Exactly right.
And this guy is a communicator to the max. He is a leader to the max. 6'6", 333 pounds. And this is what I love. You had Dane Brugler on the Pewter Report podcast a week ago talking about the draft. And listen, you and I both have had a chance to read The Beast, which is his over 400-page draft guide. It's fantastic. And this is what Dane Brugler from The Athletic had to say about Landon Dickerson. Old school, nasty competitor, and is always looking for a warm body to bury, said an NFL scout. He's a foxhole type, the kind of guy you hate to play against, but love to play with. And John, that's exactly what the tape says about this guy.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, he is what the Bucs look for in every facet as a player, I think. And I think he's going to be a great scheme fit as well. I mean, Alabama runs a little bit of everything for sure, but I think he's going to be a very good scheme fit as well. He'll have to learn a little bit different footwork, but I don't think that's a concern. Again, it's just the health. That's the only thing. If he is healthy and he's there at 32, I really think he's going to be the Bucs pick. I know we've got another mock to go, Scott, where maybe we're giving away too much. And we'll see. We've changed our minds before. Right. We always go back and forth until about this time of year. We zero in on kind of what we think. And I just think Giant Jensen's in the last year of his deal, right? And so is Alex Kappa. And both won't be back, and maybe neither are back. And you don't want the offensive line falling off and what might be Brady's last season. You want to keep that window open. And so he could play guard. He could play center, by the way. So if they wanted to re-sign Jensen, Dickerson could play guard, but they're probably not going to re-sign both. And so then you have that one of those positions solved. And then maybe they still draft somebody later. Right now, they don't have anybody who snaps as their backups.
That's right.
So that's important too. They don't even have a backup center. So he gives you a backup at both spots.
And with that ACL injury, there's the chance that he can play this season. I mean, the timing of it happened in December. He had the surgery. He actually took a snap or two in the final championship game to kneel out the clock and run it out. His prognosis is, I think he's on track to possibly be ready for training camp or to certainly be ready for the season when September rolls around. But even if he didn't play it down, you have this guy in the hopper. And you know what? We've always talked about with our offensive linemen, whether they're drafting a tackle or an interior player, that Joe Hague role, right? That big, beefy offensive lineman, the reserve that comes in and gets some reps as that extra tight end. And if that's the position he plays to get his feet wet while he's learning from Ryan Jensen or Alex Kappa, whether it's guard or center, it would be an absolutely home run pick. And listen, I don't think that the offensive linemen, right? They're not sexy picks. They're not going to generate the buzz that a Travis Etienne would, right? But we've had Quinn Miners in a lot of our mocks up until now. Now we're rolling the dice, but I don't think it's that big of a reach, John, with Landon Dickerson.
No, I don't. Again, the only way it would be a reach is if the medicals are scarier. But I'm comforted that we've heard nothing leading up. We've just said, oh, these injuries happened in the past. We'll have to see what teams think. But we have not heard anything from big media or anything. And it could be because of the pre-draft process being different. Right. But we haven't heard anything about it saying, oh, this is a concern. The other thing about Dickerson, and some people have mentioned in the chat, I love Ryan Jensen to death. The snaps were an issue at times. Tom Brady doesn't get enough credit for how many off to the left snaps he fielded last year cleanly and made great plays with them. And I don't know that there was any. Was there one fumble? I mean,
I think there was one, but it seemed to me that there was an issue there, like maybe a health issue with Ryan Jensen. Yes. He didn't appear on the injury report, and sometimes if you play through it and you practice through it, doesn't mean that you're 100%.
We're dropping some hints here. We're dropping some hints. That
there could have been an injury with Ryan Jensen, right? So, but like you said, John, there's nobody currently on the roster. AQ Shipley's on the coaching staff, right? They didn't re-sign Earl Watford. So, in my opinion, I think this is a fantastic fit for the Buccaneers, and I think that he can come in and learn from two veterans in Kappa and Jensen, and be a factor at right guard or center, and be a guy that can contribute in that Joe Hague role.
It's not very often at 32 that you can get a player that you would feel confident stepping in at any moment from a physical, from a technique standpoint. You feel confident stepping in the midst of a rookie season and playing at a high level if he needed to in case of an injury, and then seamlessly kind of being able to be a pivot for Tom Brady in what might be Brady's final season. I think that's possible with Dickerson. I love the pick. I think it's a.
And you know what, John? His stock is rising. I think with the medicals, like you talked about, if he's completely healthy, John, this is a top 20 pick. He's not there for the Buccaneers at 32. I think that the medicals might give some teams pause, but I think right now his stock is up. And speaking of stocks, John, if you haven't had a chance to check out Symbol yet, what are you waiting for? Symbol is the stock market for sports that allows you to trade sports teams like stocks and earn cash payouts when your teams win. Symbol has blended stocks and sports to offer you a new way to invest in and profit off of your favorite teams. Use your sports knowledge to buy low, sell high, earn cash payouts when your teams win. Join the 2,500 plus early adopters, including yours truly here, who have started to invest in their favorite teams. The stock market for sports is just a tap away. Create a free account in seconds. Start profiting from your sports knowledge. It's real simple. To sign up, they're going to give you a $10 deposit bonus when you use the promo code Pewter Report. So go to www.symbol.app/Pewter Report to get that $10 sign-up bonus. The Bucs franchise this week holding strong at $43. And as you know, John, Symbol is the proud sponsor of the Bucs Monday Mailbag. If you haven't read that yet, Mark Cook put it out early this morning. So make sure that you check that out on pewterreport.com. John, I think the stock is rising for another player. Let's go. I did
want to mention this, Scott, before you get second. It sounds like, based on tweets from Mike Reese and Adam Schefter, that Julian Edelman is actually going to retire. And this is kind of the first step in that process. So
it makes plenty of sense.
Right.
I think that people are jumping to the conclusions.
It's always fun to speculate, man.
Of course it is. We're speculating that a player whose stock is rising is this guy right here, Peyton Turner.
Yeah, this one's interesting, Scott. I love Peyton Turner, right? I wrote him up very highly. I think he's actually going to finish as my edge 4, I believe, once I factor in his athletic testing. I haven't done that yet. But he tested very, very well at his pro day. Great 3-cone for being a big guy. Unbelievable length. 35.25-inch arms?
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, dude's arms for days. He's violent. He's physical, very aggressive. I don't know how fast he is. I don't think he ran the 40. I don't know how fast he is, but I think he's very explosive out of a 3-point stance. Out of a 2-point stance, he's got to work. He's a little bit ants in the pants, wobbling around. He's got to get that timing down. But yeah, man, he is very impressive on tape. I really didn't see him as a natural fit for the Bucs, but then you kind of talked to me and you were like, what is a natural fit for the Bucs at edge defender? Because they have Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Anthony Nelson, and those guys don't look anything alike. And so
you're right.
Yeah, it's been very difficult to figure out exactly. The length certainly would be intriguing for everybody, and the fact that he's played in a stand-up position. But if they're going to drop 100 snaps a game, I wouldn't see him as that type of player. But then again, I wouldn't have seen Jason Pierre-Paul as that type of player either. So maybe they just don't.
You mentioned the wingspan, 84 inches, 35-inch arms. He did not run the 40-yard dash at his pro day, but when you watch the tape, it certainly seems like he's fast enough, quick enough, and the kid hustles. I mean, he will chase down plays from the backside. He'll chase ball carriers down the field. He is a high-effort, high-motor guy. He had a 35.5-inch vertical, and so you see some explosion there, bench 23 reps, which is pretty good with long arms, right? I mean,
very long arms. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to be in the top percentile in the league for arm length at that position.
There's no doubt about it. And just to put it in perspective, Jason Pierre-Paul, when he came out in the draft, he was at the 87th percentile when it comes to wingspan and arm length. And this guy has longer arms and a bigger wingspan than Jason Pierre-Paul. So that's crazy. Probably in the 95th percentile all time.
Yeah, that's pretty wild
for edge guys. And you mentioned the body type. He's got the length that Anthony Nelson has, and Jason Pierre-Paul. He's a bigger guy, but he's kind of in between a Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul in some respects. And also he's a little bit in between because he played at 273, actually showed up at the Senior Bowl at 273, lost a bit of weight, was down to 268 at his pro day, probably trying to get a little faster, although he didn't really run. But I think he's a guy, when you look at his frame, that if you put 10 more pounds on him, I don't know that he loses a whole bunch of speed necessarily. And if you get him around 280, I think he could still play there because he's got kind of a lean physique. He's an angular guy, but thick lower body. And, you know, he could see some time at that 4-eye, 5 technique defensive end spot. I know they need somebody to replace Will Golston, who's entering the last year of his contract. He's 30 years old. So I think he's got some position versatility here that might be appealing to the Buccaneers. And he's a player that has a little bit of a up-and-coming pass rush. He had 3.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups in 2019. Only played in I believe, 6 games last year, but had 5 sacks and a forced fumble. And had a sack on Zach Wilson, had 2 sacks against Tulane. So I think the pass rush is developing with this guy.
Yeah, what I love about him is that I think for a big guy, usually you try to overpower people or you knock guys back and you get those opportunities in his conference that you're not going to get in the NFL. But he has that power, that physicality, that speed to power conversion as a pass rusher, but he also will win the edge on you. That's not common. I mean, a lot of people loved Marcus Davenport coming out. The Saints traded on next year's first and that year's first to go up to get him. Baffling move to me. To me, I think Turner's tape is clearly better. I wouldn't trade up 2 picks in the first to get him. But I mean, to me, they're very similar prospects in a lot of ways, except Turner is just more violent, more consistently physical. And that really matters in the trenches. He's got that ability to, again, win the edge with moves and with flexibility. And his explosiveness out of a 3-point stance, if he can get to the same explosiveness, if people watch him on tape, watch him when he's in a 3-point stance compared to his 2-point stance, get off. If he can get his 2-point stance there, it's going to be scary. I mean, he really is a very, very talented player, and I thought he did well at the Senior Bowl too.
You draft this guy, he comes in, he blocked an extra point last year for Houston. He helps you out in special teams and your field goal and extra point block team because of his length and because of his size. He can be a situational pass rusher, and he's learning from 2 of the best in the game, Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul. He's probably the eventual successor to Pierre-Paul, who's 32 and has had his second knee procedure in as many years. So I think it'll be a strong pick for Tampa Bay should they go there in the second round and draft him. So let's go to the third round now. You know, can't rule this out, especially because it's round 3. We talked about Giovanni Bernard being from North Carolina back in the day as a pass-catching running back. And really, John, that's exactly what Michael Carter is. This is a guy that just destroyed Miami and Virginia Tech. And as much as you and I like Javonte Williams, this was the leading rusher for North Carolina last year.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny to think about. We've talked about Javonte so much, and another guy, he wasn't even the leading rusher on his team, although it was obviously very close. Yeah. But Michael Carter is the 3-down guy. If you ask me who's the better receiver out of he or Williams, I would say it's Carter. And that's very, very valuable to play running back. And he's a good rusher. He shouldered a load, obviously, at UNC. He's a good rusher, and he's a very good pass protector. His tape is littered with high IQ and high effort pass protection reps. Does he get knocked back on occasion because he's only like 200 pounds and 5'8"? Yes, but he's very physical, and you can see in this image. I mean, if you're watching the pod, he's very well built. Like, he's not a frail build whatsoever. He's very stocky. I mean, I saw him interviewed. He was on NFL Network, I believe, on Good Morning Football, I think, this morning. And, man, he's built. He is a physical dude. There's a lot of confidence. He's interviewed and he's a lot of confidence. Yeah. So again, I don't think this was, by the way, obviously this was before Giovanni Bernard was signed by the Bucs that we did this mock. This was this morning that it came out. But so I do not think they'll take a running back now in the first 3 rounds. If they did, it would be in the 3rd round, near the end of the 3rd round. It would be probably the best available guy at that point in time, I think maybe. But it would still surprise me a little bit if they did, but you never know. Like you said, they're on 1-year deals, a lot of these guys, so it's still possible for sure.
And the thing is he had 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, 1,003 yards, 3 touchdowns with a 5.7-yard average in 2019. And really, despite Javonte Williams being in the same backfield, he exploded for an 8-yard average over the span of the season, 1,245 yards, 9 touchdowns. Javonte Williams was more of the red zone and end zone type goal line back, had a lot more touchdowns than Michael Carter did, but Carter still found the pay dirt 9 times on the ground and also caught 2 touchdown passes. He had 25 catches for 267 yards, averaged 10.7 yards per carry. That's an average that only Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones could dream of. But he's had a touchdown catch in at least one in all 4 of his seasons and has had at least 21 catches in each of the last 3 seasons. So he's a player that, like you said, can be a factor on 3rd down. He even can help the kick return game a little bit. Right. He's got about I think a 21-yard average. It wasn't spectacular as a kick return guy, but if you're looking for something for him to do as a rookie, I think Michael Carter can help you out in special teams as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's definitely a move that makes a lot of sense. If Bernard weren't in the fold now, I think it still could be helpful for them.
It would be a luxury.
It would be very much a luxury, yes. They would have to really love him above the other players on the board, and even then you'd have to consider trade downs and things like that. But, yeah, it's still possible for sure. Okay, Derek Barnes in the 4th round. I don't know that they're going to draft Derek Barnes, and I don't know that Derek Barnes is going to be there in round 4, but you and I both really like Derek Barnes, Scott. I texted you about him the one day, and I was like, dude, I sent you it was like late at night. I was watching him for whatever reason. I was sending you, I think you were already asleep. I sent you 10 clips of Derek Barnes to make him plays. You woke up and got a highlight reel of Barnes plays from his all 22 that I was watching. But man, he's very physical. I know you'll probably talk about his wingspan, his length. It's pretty unbelievable for that position, but he's physical. He tested really well. He played some edge defender for them, so he's got situational pass rush ability. I think more as an off-ball linebacker, to be honest.
Yes.
He just understands creating speed to power. He blew up a running back in one of the games I studied. He's just physical, aggressive, range. You see him make plays out the perimeter all the time on his tape.
Yeah,
I love what he brings to the table. I don't know if he's going to be there round 4. I don't know when the Bucs are going to take a linebacker because they have 2 that never come off the field and a backup they like in Minter, but he definitely would be a value pick, and this is a draft where they're in position to just take value if he's on the board.
Yeah, and the thing is again, we talked about at the top of the show, you look at the inside linebacker position, they only have 3 on the roster. They need at least 4, so they're going to have to draft one. They drafted Chappelle Russell last year in the 7th round. They cut him around midseason. They had to bring back Buchanan, Deion Buchanan, just for the Super Bowl because Jack Sitchie was unavailable. He was always hurt, so they parted ways with Sitchie. So they need somebody in the hopper to play special teams immediately, and someone to eventually replace Lavonte David. So why not a player like Derek Barnes? And we've got some comments here. Draft Barnes in round 3 instead of Carter. That probably makes more sense right now.
Probably what we would have done, honestly, if we had known that Giovanni Bernard was going to sign with the Bucs, because I think he will be a 3rd round pick. I think he'll be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Yeah. I know that's probably flying in the face of, I think a lot of the simulators out there don't have him until very, very late, but I don't think that.
We've got some intel that I think Barnes might end up getting into the top 100. So that kind of puts him on the Bucs radar then in the 3rd round, if that's the case. And this is a good point from Horace the Great here. You look at Lavonte David, I believe he started all 16 games last year, but he missed a game the year prior. I know Devin White in 2 seasons in the NFL has not played all 16 games. mentors had to step in, both as during his rookie season and also last year when Devin White was out with COVID-19. So you want to have somebody that can handle the load there. And I'll tell you what, we talked about the physicality. I mean, this guy, you look at his tape, he's got some incredibly long arms, John. I mean, he's only 6 foot 238. He played at 245. I think he trimmed down to run a blazing fast 4.57. That's not world-class speed like Devin White has, but right now that's probably about what Lavonte David runs. And so you look at the arm length, and why is that important? Because he's got 33-inch arms and 81-inch wingspan. Those are the longest arms of any linebacker in this draft. And what that allowed him to do is create separation from those offensive tackles. When he was a pass rusher, he was asked to move from linebacker to defensive end in 2019. He had 92 tackles and 3 sacks as a blitzing linebacker and off-the-ball linebacker in 2018. As a sophomore, the coaches said, hey, Derek, we know you can get to the quarterback. We need you to play full-time defensive end. So he did that as an undersized pass rusher. And, John, you should be some of those clips that got me excited about the guy. He reminds me of a poor man's Khalil Mack in the way that he just uses brute strength and quickness and suddenness to get into the tackles, drive them back, discard them, and get to the quarterback. Had 11 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, a forced fumble recovery as a junior. Then they said, hey, Derek, we know you got used to rushing the passer, but we really need you at middle linebacker this year. So he played his 3rd position in 3 years, was a team captain, had his first interception, and had 54 tackles in 6 games. So he really shows you a lot of versatility. The guy loves football. He's got an infectious personality. He is a hustle sideline to sideline player. He's my draft crush. We talked about it.
Yeah.
Computer Report Roundtable on Sunday. I wrote about him in the Fab Five. Oh, and by the way, why are we talking about Derek Barnes? Because he had a Zoom interview with the Buccaneers last week. We can report that news.
Right, exactly. So there's definitely some interest there. I think there is with almost everybody we've looking down the list. Yeah, I think we've got some level of interest for sure confirmed with just about everybody on that list almost. And so we are not just going off what we see, although we're excited about some of these players. We're also going off what we hear as well. So we'll see what happens with all these guys. But yes, moving on from Barnes, who I do think there were a couple questions in the chat actually about Christian Barmore that I wanted to address. Let me see if I can find them and pull them up. Derek Barnes, some Long Lost Glazer wants to know if Derek Barnes will be drafted in front of Dylan Moses. I think that he will be, yes, and I definitely prefer Barnes. The problem with Moses is that it's just so inconsistent, and the injuries have really held him back. So he had he was supposed to be high end prospect. Then he had the big injury in 2019. Then in 2020 he was bad. He struggled, and he was playing through an injury. I think it was a torn meniscus. I want to say something like that. So it's just he's not been able to stay healthy. The tape has gone downhill. The athleticism seems to be coming few and far between reps right now.
I like Dylan Moses. I love Derek Barnes.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Dylan Moses feels like he's destined to be a day 3 pick at this point in time. I think Barnes will sneak into day 2 for sure somewhere. Somebody asked about Christian Barmore. I don't even see it anymore, but they asked about Christian Barmore if they think we think he will be there at 32, and if we think the Bucs should take him if he is. I don't think he'll be there at 32, and I don't want the Bucs to take him if he is there at 32. I think he can be a good player, but I don't think it's imminent, and I worry about. I want to know that a guy's all in, baby, and that he gets it. And I don't know if that's the case. And I see even on his tape, he's jumping off sides on 4th down. He just does a lot of things technically and mentally. You know, he doesn't read blocks very well. He's far away from being that kind of a contributor. I think he's a risky pick for whoever takes him. He's talent, especially as a pass rusher. I wouldn't pull my hair out if they took him or anything like that. I don't think they'll take him either, Scott, even if he's there. Do you?
Right. No, I'm with you on that. I don't think that's the case. We do have a $10 super chat from Toby. Thank you so much. I made a $10 bet Mac Jones would be there at 32. Seems at this point, so squaring up ahead of time. P.S. Solid free agent acquisition prediction for Bernard. I definitely agree. I think Bernard's a great fit. Listen, I think the Bucs like Mac Jones. Another quarterback they do like Kyle Trask. I've known about that for a while. Where they like him and how much,
that's the thing.
Determines. That's going to be the question. But could Kyle Trask be the 3rd round pick? Maybe. Could he be of interest on day 3? I think they'd prefer him on day 3, but will he be there? I'm not sure.
That's one of the things that bears talking about, Scott, honestly, because even though I've obviously in the camp that they shouldn't draft a quarterback at all, I almost start to think as we get closer and there's no other quarterbacks on the roster other than Brady and, of course, Cam Brate. I am like, man, I just don't know. I think they're going to draft one.
I think they're going to draft one, too, to replace Ryan Griffin in that number 3 role. I think
it's a value thing, too, right? Like, I expect Blaine Gabbert to be back, but like you said, it's a Ryan Griffin thing, and then it's a value thing for them. And they, in their eyes, we don't have any crying needs. Yeah. Even if our quarterback QB3 turns out to be a good backup someday and we can trade it, it's a trade chip. I get it. Like I said, I wouldn't do it. I don't think the chance of some of those guys.
And the head coach is the quarterback whisperer, John. He wants to tutor a young guy. You got
maybe that's the part that actually makes me think they won't draft a quarterback. To be honest, because I don't know whether Bruce Arians will even be there long term to tutor the guy that they would take or to fit to an offense. It could be a new Byron Leftwich could get a head coaching job next year if the offense is good again. He probably will. And so there could be none of the offensive minds that are currently there. So you could be drafting a quarterback for an unknown, fit for an unknown coordinator or coach someday. So it's a lot to project. It's just, I wouldn't do it. But again, it's one of those things that I could definitely see them doing it. Not in the first round. That would shock me. I know people have said either Davis Mills has been floated there. That would floor me.
That's not happening.
That's not
much on that. But I do see them drafting another player, a couple players, maybe on the offensive side on day 3. Let's go back to our mock, John. In the 5th round, UCF wide receiver, tight end Jacob Harris. This is a player you kind of turned me on to Peyton Turner. I've kind of turned you on, I think, to Jacob Harris a little bit. This guy is really interesting.
Dane Brugler's number 7 tight end, by the way.
Yes. Now, it's a little funny, right? Because this is a 6'5", 219-pound tight end. I've seen Tanner Hudson up close, John. You've not had the chance to meet him yet, but Tanner Hudson is not exactly the most physically overwhelming person. You look at him and you think he looks like a big wide receiver rather than a tight end. And Tanner Hudson's about 240 some pounds, but this is a guy who's about 20 pounds lighter than Tanner Hudson. But what you do like about Jacob Harris is 6'5", 219. We talked about Dane Brugler's draft guide, The Beast, and this is what Brugler had to say about Harris. He has the temperament needed to block at a high level. UCF coaches have praised his work ethic and get better everyday mindset. So I think that the interesting thing about Harris is you could keep him at wide receiver at that size because he's actually probably on par with Mike Evans from a build perspective right now. And the reason why I say that is because he ran a 4.39 40-yard dash at his UCF Pro Day, and he had a 40-inch vertical. And he had an 11.1-inch broad jump. This guy is a tremendously gifted athlete, and he's a deep ball threat. He had 19 catches for 488 yards.
Well, you haven't even mentioned the most insane statistic from his athletic testing, his 3-cone. He ran a 6.51 3-cone, Scott. He is 6'5", 219.
Yeah.
When you talk, he is tier 1 athlete, here for this draft or for any draft.
for real. And the thing is he's undersized for the tight end role, but he's kind of perfect size if you want a big wide receiver. He averaged 23.6 yards per catch with 1 touchdown as a junior. Then his senior year, he had 30 catches for 539 yards. And his lofty average fell, from 23.6 all the way down to 18 yards per catch. That's still a tremendous number for a wide receiver, regardless of size. And he caught 8 touchdowns. He destroyed Taylor Jenkins, USF Bulls.
Taylor Jenkins.
5 catches,
took a shot at him.
Yards, 22-yard average, and 3 touchdowns. So this is a player that on day 3 you need to have him come in and help on special teams. And that's what his role was. In 2018, he had 7 special teams tackles for the Knights and a fumble recovery. And the coaches love his work ethic. They love his special teams prowess. So he's a developmental guy that can come in with more upside and more speed than Justin Watson. He can replace him and help out on special teams.
For sure. The concerns are, I mean, you've a guy who barely has played football. He's not caught a pass at a game at any level, Dane wrote, until his junior year at UCF in 2019. So he is extremely raw. Make no mistake, if he came to Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he would 100% be a wide receiver. This is not a tight end. This is not an offense that would use a tight end, an undersized tight end, or a tight end that has this little experience. It's a very complicated offense for a tight end. He would be a wide receiver. He'd be a gunner probably. He would be a special teams impact guy, which is critical at this point in time, especially with losing Ryan Smith. So I think I love the fact that Dane highlights his effort and the fact that he'll work really hard. He's 24 years old on draft weekend. That's a concern too. To be as old as he is, one of the oldest prospects in this class, and be basically almost totally inexperienced, it's concerning for him ever reaching anything other than a special teams type of role, which is fine. I mean, if that's what you get.
The Bucs do have a similar type of athlete. Now, he is a legit tight end, Cody McElroy. He didn't play last year, but he was signed to the practice squad in 2019. He actually had one catch for, I think, 30 yards in maybe the season finale or the game before that. Cody McElroy is 28 years old. He's on the practice squad. So it's rare that you have a practice squad guy at age 28.
It's true. But he stuck around, and Jacob Harris could stick around too. Yeah, I mean, but again, it would probably be as a wide receiver because, and again, let's talk when we just mentioned, right? 6'5", 219, the size is there. In terms of the athletic testing, no question. 4.4 40 flat, 40.5-inch vertical, box checked. Even his broad jump, which I read a little bit about too, 11.1 over would be the best broad jump of any receiver the Lights ever drafted. So I mean, all the boxes are there. Yes, in terms of traits and day 3 guys you take a flyer on, the boxes are there. It's very much a flyer. Right.
So the one thing that Giovanni Bernard signing does is probably take them out of the mix if they were to go and stay with running back and Michael Carter. If they thought it was a value worth taking in the 3rd round, probably wouldn't draft Demetric Felton, who is a running back, wide receiver, kick return guy. I wouldn't rule it out. They might take him in on day 3 if they don't take Carter, because this is a guy that is a bit of a jack of all trades. He's a weapon. We know the Buccaneers have had a Zoom call with them. They met with him at the Senior Bowl, so there is some interest there. They've met with them twice. But the thing with Felton is he played wide receiver for a couple of years at UCLA, and also was given some carries, but really became kind of their primary running back, or at least a guy in the mix as a senior. 132 carries for 668 yards, a 5.1 yard average, 5 touchdowns, and caught 55 passes the year before for 594 yards, a 10.8 yard average, 4 touchdowns. Then as a senior, added 22 catches, 159 yards, 7.2 yard average, 3 touchdowns. He does have a kick return for a touchdown on his resume. That happened in 2019 against Washington State. And John, he went to the Senior Bowl where he upped his stock a little bit, really playing that kind of slot wide receiver. But really it's the athletic testing that has taken that stock from the Senior Bowl where it was on the rise and kind of lowered it a little bit, because he ran a 4.59 time in the 40-yard dash. And the problem is he's 5'8.5", 189 pounds. He's work done size, but without work done talent, John.
Yeah, and we know the Bucs have interest. I mean, we know they've talked to him, and we're kind of playing that angle. But I think I speak for both of us when I say I'm not really sure I would be fired up about a Demetric Felton pick. Yeah. There's not really refinement in any position. At this point, running back seems out for him, and especially if you were to go to the Bucs, I don't know that it makes much sense. He would have to learn so much pass protection. I mean, come on. Yeah. I mean, when would he see it? Now they've signed Giovanni Bernard. It seems like that's a long shot. The wide receiver we've talked about, he's 5'8", he's 189, he ran 4.59. He jumped 31.5. He doesn't fit anything that they look for. It would be a very Kalen Clay-like pick if you recall. It would be he's being drafted for returnability, and he doesn't return punts, and that's the only thing that's valuable. Anybody can do kick returns really these days. Well, it's punts, and he doesn't do that. So
you need a punt returner because everyone's got the touchbacks going with the kickoff specialist and all of that. So
it's funny people are tuning into the show and haven't seen that they weren't here earlier in the show, and they haven't seen that the Bucs signed Giovanni Bernard, and we're mentioning it offhand, and people are like, Gio, what? Like they're all confused. I think that's hilarious. But I think you and I know that there's interest in Felton to a degree, at least. Maybe the Bernard move, maybe they saw him as a running back and Antonio Gibson, makeup pick for them, and now they're out on that. And maybe our next mock will reflect that. I'm not sure I see the Felton thing that the Bucs maybe have seen. He fits more of looking at his measurables, his production. I know he did some impressive things at the Senior Bowl, but just knowing what the league values, he's a gadget guy that isn't a very good athlete. I mean, he didn't test well in anything as an athlete, nothing. And he's small and he doesn't play a position. That's an undrafted guy almost every single year with his minimal production. So I think he'll be undrafted still, but we are playing the odds here that they have shown some interest there.
Yeah, and listen, we're talking about a late 6th round pick here, almost around 7. So that's probably about where he would be drafted.
Right. You throw out a lot of those measurables at that point for some teams, and you just take a guy if you liked him on tape and see what happens.
Exactly. Going to the 7th round now, the Bucs have 2 picks. They're late picks. We have them taking Arkansas defensive tackle Jonathan Marshall. And again, John, you're looking for traits. And the interesting thing about Jonathan Marshall is he's got some interesting measurables and athletic traits. If you go back and look, yes, Jason Light drafted Vita Vea with the 1st round pick, but he's also drafted 3 defensive tackles on day 3. Stevie Tuiku-Lavonte was one of the first ones a couple years ago. They drafted Terry Beckner Jr. from Missouri. He didn't end up sticking on the roster. He was a 7th round pick. That was 2 years ago. They drafted Khalil Davis from Nebraska last year. He saw some spot duty as a 6th round pick, but they still, when you look at Ndamukong Suh, Will Golston, they need to find some younger defensive linemen, and this is not a good defensive tackle class at all, John. We beat that horse to death last week on the podcast.
Yes.
So why not take a young developmental guy to kind of team with or pair with Khalil Davis or compete with Khalil Davis? And the interesting thing with Marshall is really the testing. 6'3", 310 pounds. He ran a 4.8 one time in the 40-yard dash. That's pretty good. He also showed some strength with 36 reps on the bench, so he's got some strength and some size and some speed. What he doesn't have is experience. He was a first-year starter in 2020 after seeing spot duty his first 3 years at Arkansas. And, Arkansas didn't have a ton of great talent ahead of him, so maybe he's a late bloomer. But he had 35 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, a pass breakup, a forced fumble. But he was a team captain. So there's maybe some tools to work with there. Can come in and compete. You're looking, again, for traits guys on day 3, guys that might make the roster and help you out from a depth perspective or in special teams. Right,
exactly. And that's why, I think that there's a level of that makes sense for a lot of these later picks that we have, to be honest. I mean, if you look at a guy like Marshall, it's very much traits. He could honestly come off the board earlier than this just because of those traits in a class that isn't very good. I mean, I know, like you said, the production is very poor, basically, but he's a captain his last year, and he's got this enough length, and there's athleticism there's speed, there's explosiveness in his game, obviously strength. I think that he just had technically, mentally, those things have to develop for him. The other tough thing is that he turns 24 like in week 2 of the season.
Right.
So again, with a guy that's traits, you want him to be younger.
Yeah.
And that might push him down the board into more of this round 7 range. And then Tony Poljan, the last guy off the board, we get a future tight end, right, Scott? Yeah. I mean, we get a blocker here. What's the deal with Tony Poljan?
He's more of the traditional tight end, right? So, I mean, maybe you could use Jacob Harris as a spot guy, maybe as a slot guy, to help with blocking, but he's not an inline blocker, 219 pounds. Right. Tony Poljan is an inline blocker, almost 6'7", 6'6.5", 251. I think he lost some weight to help with his times for his pro day, but he was going to play closer to 260, and he's a young developmental guy at the tight end position. He started off at Central Michigan as a quarterback, played there his first 2 seasons. But when they used him, as a tight end, he produced. He averaged 19.4 yards on 5 catches for 97 yards as a freshman, his sophomore year, 7 catches, 125 yards. That's an 18-yard average, 2 touchdowns when he wasn't playing quarterback. So they said, you know what? You're not that good of a quarterback. 2 touchdowns, 5 picks. We'll move you to tight end as a junior. And he caught 33 passes, 496 yards, and 4 scores, averaged 15 yards per catch. Then as a grad transfer, went to Virginia, where he caught more passes, 38 receptions, 411 yards, averaging 11 yards per catch, with 6 touchdowns there, playing in a better conference in the ACC. So I think that he's a player that could be in the hopper. John, you look at the fact that Rob Gronkowski is in a contract year, signing a 1-year deal, 5th-year option year for OJ Howard at the tight end position. Is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to remain a Buccaneer? Cam Brate turns 30 on July 3rd, and he's going to make the team this year, but he's got a very high cap number coming up for the last couple of years of his contract. He's not a lock to be on the roster in 2022. Then you got a player like Tanner Hudson, who really just hasn't really put it all together yet. He's also in a contract year. So It could be starting over at tight end. You could have Cam Brate next year and nobody else. So I think putting a young tight end like Tony Poljan into the hopper to replace an Anthony Auclair, that might be a good mix. And again, help shed in special teams. You're always looking for those running backs, wide receivers, cornerbacks, tight ends, linebackers. Those are the coverage guys that you're going to need to cover kicks and punts on special teams.
And it would be a shock if the Bucs went into the 2022 season without Gronk, OJ Howard, or Cameron Brate on the roster. But if you lose 2 of the 3 and Poljan's a capable blocker, that's that's your number 2 or 3 tight end, and you can go with that for a season. Not most teams don't have a tight end number 3 that anybody's even heard of. So if he can block and just do one thing well, block and just catch underneath, make a couple catches in the red zone when people forget about you on a play action pass, that's what you need from that position. So it's smart to find a little bit of value like that late in the draft, because those types, you can just do one thing well like that, especially in an offense like this that asks their tight ends to block a lot. I think it's pretty smart. That allows me, Scott, to be able to address the Cam Brate thing that is somehow bubbled under this huge rumor. I haven't even told you about this, but I was on the pod last week, and everybody was losing it. They thought Cam Brate, I wasn't on the Cam Brate pod because I've talked about, I guess I'm not the only one, but I've talked about the Bucs potentially cutting Cam Brate before free agency, and then maybe him taking a pay cut. But that was not the reason. It was actually Britt's birthday that day, so my wife's birthday. So I was planned to be off the show before we even had Cam Brate as a guest that day. So there was no way I was going to be on that show regardless. But I love Cam, and it was a great show.
If memory serves, in both my Bucs battle plan and also Mark Cook's, we also had Cam taking a pay cut. So I think you were cutting him outright, but we were really no friends of Cam and our Bucs battle plans.
I can't remember if I was cutting him outright or I was giving him a pay cut. I don't remember.
Yeah, it might have been Mark who was cutting him. I don't know, but all three of us were doing Cam Brate dirty, right? In our Bucs battle, and thankfully for Cam so far, no pay cut. So
exactly right. The fact that it's gone this far is good sign for Cam.
Yes.
That they'll be able
as
to...
Cam even we asked him the question on the podcast, and he made some news and said, no news is good news, so he hasn't heard anything. So hopefully Cam Brate can be rewarded for having a good year and really replacing OJ Howard as tight end 2 and catching a huge touchdown in the NFC Championship game. So
I'll also just say this, Scott, that if the Bucs go into next season and they're paying their number 3 tight end $6.5 million, first of all, that will be just bonkers.
Yes.
Second of all, that is going to send a big message to everybody. People looking at around the league, no matter what, to be committed like that to that degree that they've moved around money and did void years. They could have just cut their number 3 tight end or pay cut their again their number 3 tight end like they did last year. The fact that they did that after Brate played the role that he played in the playoffs, which was obviously admirable. It says a lot about this team in the front office, I think. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, money's money. At some point, you got to move things to make things happen. And like I said, we'll just have to see. But right now, the fact that they've clearly made it the last resort to do that for Cam shows they really love him. Charlie Abrams, by the way, is literally this guy. This guy honestly loves Cam Brate to a degree.
Yes.
Look at it. Can't get rid of bunch of punks here on Peter
That's
Report.
true.
Can't get rid of Cam. That is true.
John, speaking of cut.
Oh no.
I'm here to let you know that with the first pick of the 2021 men's grooming draft, the Ball Saxonville Sagwires selected Manscaped, the leaders in below the waist grooming. Looks like Mel Kiper gave this an A+ grade because this pick is a major upgrade for that Bush defense. For all of my NFL draft fans out there, we've got an exclusive 20% off promo code, Pewter, at manscaped.com. So the reason why Manscaped is the guaranteed #1 pick is because of the performance package. You've heard me talk about it, John. You've got a performance package. So do I, thanks to our great friends at Manscaped. This is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Inside the performance package, you'll find products and liquid formulations that have been developed to turn your bathroom into a salon for your balls. This package also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, which I use, and I know Mark Cook uses as well. I can confidently say this is the best tool on the market for nose and ear hair. It's not going to pull or snag. It does the job every time, and it comes with a complete rechargeable mechanism, so you can always take this on the go. Now, imagine showing up to your post-quarantine date with some nose pubes popping out. Not the best look, fellas. The performance package comes with performance boxer briefs, which, John, I happen to be wearing today, and they're quite comfortable.
They're great. Epic.
And a travel bag. They call this the shed to use when you're done quarantining, and some other liquid formulations like the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver. Okay, the Crop Preserver, this is the anti-chafing ball deodorant that ensures that your balls smell amazing. Ladies in your life, they're going to love this. Now, the Crop Reviver, this is spray-on toner for your balls. Yep, you heard it right. It's made with the soothing aloe and witch hazel extract that'll make your ball feel like Brady after a little avocado tequila. For a limited time, buyers of the performance package receive not one but 2 free gifts. They receive the Shed travel bag, $39 added value. And this is a quality travel bag too, by the way, along with the patented high-performance anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs. John, I haven't told you this. I'm actually probably going to go to Manscaped and buy a couple more pair of boxers because they sent us this as a free one. Out of all my boxers, and I love wearing boxers, these are the most comfortable. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. They are unbelievable.
They're legit.
I would not even – I laughed when you said that, but honestly, I'm not even surprised. I would be completely fine with that.
Exactly. So support the show and get 20% off plus free shipping by using their promo code Pewter at manscaped.com. They also have a ton of other amazing men's hygiene products on the website, from disposable mats for your pubes to foot deodorant. And again, we still have some of these fantastic looking Pewter Report t-shirts. So we got these white, gray, and black in all different sizes. We're going to throw in one of these for you for free. That's not on Manscaped. That's on us. And all you have to do is when you place your order, just email me at sr@pewterreport.com. That's sr@pewterreport.com. Easy to remember. Email me your proof of purchase. Doesn't have any of your credit card information on it. Don't want it. Don't need it. But it has your address. That's what I need to send you one of these shirts. So make sure you let me know what color you want and also what size you wear. We'll get one of those sent out to you in just a couple of weeks. So again, 20% off, free shipping with the promo code Pewter at manscaped.com. It's time to upgrade that defense with Manscaped.
It's going to be a great week on the Pewter Report podcast, Scott, and not just because of that ad read, although that'll catapult us nicely into the rest of the week. We've got lots to talk about with the Giovanni Bernard signing, with some of these wide receivers we're going to be writing about, these wide receiver draft prospects we're going to be writing about at Pewter Report. We're also going to be kicking off very soon our positional previews and Bucs best bets. So we'll have that to write about at pewterreport.com as well as to discuss on the podcast. So there will be tons of great stuff coming up. And on Thursday, Matt Waldman, the Godfather himself, is joining the podcast to talk draft prospects, especially for the Bucs. But we'll talk Bucs-oriented draft prospects with Matt Waldman on Thursday on the podcast, 4 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We appreciate y'all joining and jumping in with us, as always, on another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.